SocialImpactCX, the podcast that helps you drive mission and make a difference with customer experience.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for the SocialImpactCX podcast. I'm John Corrigan, and I'll be your guide to how you can drive mission and achieve social impact with customer experience work. This is episode 12 of SocialImpactCX, and again, thanks for listening. Today, I'm grateful for not only everyone listening to this podcast, but especially for the inspiration of the one and only Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V as he's known. I had the chance to see Gary speak live and in person a couple months ago at an event called VoiceCon in New York City. If you follow Gary on Twitter, Instagram, or anywhere else online, you'll know that he's not only quite inspiring for anyone who's working to build a business, but really I think also he's inspiring for anyone who's out there working to make a difference like we are here at SocialImpactCX. Forewarned, forearmed, if you've never tuned into Gary, just know that he's liable to drop an occasional F-bomb in and among his many valid comments and relevant points. He speaks the truth in a rather clear and unvarnished manner. But a couple things that I really like are, first, his focus on gratitude. The second thing that I'd like to call out is that Gary is also really focused on positivity. He literally tweeted recently that his tweet was, "Being nice has a positive ROI," which in my book is fantastic. He also is constantly talking about hustle and hard work and commitment, which I certainly appreciate as well. But I don't think there are that many voices out there consistently talking gratitude and positivity. And I want to take a moment to express my gratitude for Gary and for being a leader out there who promotes both of those things, gratitude and positivity. Of course, he's out there selling, and always hustling, but never without gratitude and positivity. So building on that theme of gratitude and positivity, let's talk about some critically important elements in building a strong customer experience program that's designed for social impact and that will ultimately serve beneficiaries, clients, customers, patients, and others for the greater good. Let's talk about culture. This is so important. I can't underscore that enough. Culture is where it's at for good CX work, whether you are a nonprofit, a for-profit, a social enterprise, a B corporation, whatever your thing is, your success or failure in doing whatever it is that you do will all pretty much come down to culture, believe it or not. Culture is going to make or break you, and I share this point from real-world experiences from both myself as well as other CX professionals and executives. Culture is absolutely critical. A bad or toxic work environment will ultimately result in some type of bad or toxic or otherwise less than desired experience. And when your mission is all about helping people, as it is in social impact scenarios, those experiences really count for something. We're many times talking about experiences that will or will not ultimately help someone in an environment related to health or education or social assistance of some form. This stuff really counts. And so it's definitely worthwhile to focus on creating the best and the most meaningful experience possible. I think that's why most of us are here at Social Impact CX, because we're working on helping people. And this is important work. Okay, so there are many aspects of culture in any organization or company. Culture, ladies and gentlemen, is complex. It's always complex. It's not unusual for a culture in a company or organization to be a bit tailored or quirky or somehow otherwise unique. And that makes sense because each company or organization is different. But for this podcast, I'd like to up-level a bit and highlight two key components of any culture that if you are doing the hard work required to build a customer experience function within your organization or business, you must be aware of these two key elements, no matter how unique or unusual your organization's culture may be. There are many elements involved in any culture because culture is very complex, as I've pointed out, and that's just about anywhere. But if you are to succeed in your efforts to create better experiences for the people you're working to serve, then I'd suggest you start by having a clear understanding and focus on two key elements of culture, both leadership and then the idea of team. And by team, I mean team members. I consider leadership and team to be almost equally important. Together, sharing top billing here as foundational components of customer experience work as you find in the key issue of culture. However, since I'm an almost fanatical believer in top-down leadership, I'll propose that leadership maybe edges out team by just a hair. So I'll first turn to the subject of leadership and then move to this idea of team or team members, because by team I do mean team members rather than employees. Very important distinction. That's team members working together. Back in Social Impact CX episode 10, when Thomas Martin was a guest on this podcast, we touched on how team members make good experiences happen, not necessarily employees. But since leadership many times precedes the existence of team members or employees, I'm going to start with leadership, and then I'll get to teams and team members and what I think is really important about team members versus employees, which I think is a subject worth exploring. So I mentioned that I'm a pretty firm believer in top-down leadership. That means that whatever a CEO or president or executive director, whoever your executive most senior leaders are, whatever that person thinks, says, does, and does is really important here, because actions do speak louder than words. Whatever is going on with leadership, that sets the tone for an organization or business. It all starts at the top. So when considering customer experience work, and once again, a customer can be called a client or beneficiary or patient or something else, especially in a social impact or nonprofit environment, you have to look at what's going on at the top. You need to understand the commitment of your leaders, and I'll tell you from experience that you'll likely find yourself in one of two situations: either collaboration with leadership already maniacally focused on your clients, beneficiaries, customers, or whomever you're working to serve, or possibly you'll be looking to form a relationship with leadership where you are going to be evangelizing the core idea of customer experience work, which is to create more value. And in a social impact or nonprofit setting, more value many times means more help, more assistance, more people that are somehow better off by the experiences that your organization is providing. And a key part of any evangelization for any CX team or CX advocate will be to educate. And I do mean taking it from the top for the top. Why is it that research will help us be more productive in helping people? What are those findings going to help us do more? What is the voice of the customer or client or beneficiary, and why is that crucial? Why is empathy and a better understanding of those that we're trying to help, why is that so darn important? It'll be important to cover all those topics. If your leader is new to CX work and the benefits of customer experience concepts, then you have some work to do. And don't be too concerned here, because this is typically great work to do. But if you're taking CX concepts and ideas to leadership, rather than leadership pulling you into a focus on customer experience, make sure that you recognize that you do have some education to do. And preparing the tutorial and rationale or business case in a presentation or in materials that are easy to understand and consume with your leadership, that's critical work that you really must undertake and take seriously. Now, you might be thinking, John, who isn't totally focused on the customer or client or patient or beneficiary? This is like motherhood and apple pie, isn't it? Isn't it what everybody does? Well, it requires some further thought and examination sometimes, because you might be surprised. While it's almost always popular to talk about the importance of customers and whomever you're working to serve, the truth is that it's really easy to pay lip service to that idea, but then really put time, resources, effort, priorities on a service or a product or research or a program. And this happens all the time. Trust me, in both nonprofit and for-profit situations, this happens all the time. So if you've realized that you work in an environment where people say they're focused on a client or customer, but when it comes down to decision-making, budget allocations, head count, when push comes to shove, the real focus ends up being a program or an event or a service offering, something that perhaps the organization has always done, well, then you have some work to do. And I'd suggest that you start that work by putting the beneficiary or the client or customer or patient right in the middle of whatever it is that you are doing. And now, organizations that actually design experiences, they get into service design and experience design, which that would be a different podcast. They put the customer right in the center, and then they start looking at how everything happens according to the experiences that are being had by that customer or client. And so initiating the conversation about who's benefiting from a program, that's one way for you to start this process. So who's benefiting from a program, or how do people get some meaning or maybe a positive experience from a key service offering, something that seems really important to the whole organization? What is the experience that's being had by the end recipient? How are people measurably better off by following perhaps what occurs at a signature event? Focusing on who is benefiting and then tying those answers or outcomes of those questions to the mission and measurement of your organization or business is really important. By connecting the dots of your organization or business, drawing a line or whatever descriptor here that works best for you, you'll be leading your leadership to better understand the customer, client, or beneficiary. And that requires empathy. And we're right back to a core fundamental aspect of customer experience work, empathy. Empathy requires that you do some fundamental things that perhaps you're not doing today. And this gets back to educating leadership on important work to be done, such as research, real research that provides direct inputs from the people you're working to serve. And if you've listened to other episodes of Social Impact CX, you'll know that I'm not talking about filtered comments from an anecdotal observation in the field or input you have from your colleagues who talk to so-and-so. Those can be important inputs as well too. But true empathy requires that you understand what is going on from the perspective of whomever you're working to serve. What's it look like from their chair? What's it like to walk in their shoes? Real research that gets input directly from your customer, client, patient, whoever it is you're trying to serve is really important. While you may understand the importance of research and other fundamental CX program elements, your goal here, especially engaging with leadership, is that you need to make sure that your leaders also understand, value, and appreciate fundamental CX research, such as fundamental CX activities, such as research, that lead you to true empathy for the people you're trying to help. I've heard stories from other customer experience leaders that are really kind of shocking, but they're true. There are real-life situations where budgets and time and people's efforts have been involved. Various members of management will commit to customer experience work when initial findings and recommendations are made, it then becomes clear that no one touched base with executive leadership. And that's when real problems can occur. Very real disconnects. Without engaging with leadership right up front, it's hard to understand that sometimes executives are really only concerned about certain operational metrics or cost structures or margin or some other metric that's most important to them. Or maybe continuing on with a program or activity it's just always been done that way, and it seems to be core and essential to what the organization does. The magic of customer experience work in a nonprofit or social impact environment is that when this work is done properly, it usually helps you better achieve mission. And research findings that help improve empathy can also then not only provide a new lens on perhaps how the organization is doing what they're doing, but it also can bring some new ideas and challenges to the status quo. And this is very true. And so you have to realize that you could be introducing to leadership and the rest of the organization some new ideas and be prepared for that, which these are all on behalf of better serving the customer and hoping to better achieve mission. But it's different, and you need to be prepared that you're going to be bringing forward some ideas that may very well be different than what general thoughts have been in the past. But the more you know about whomever you're trying to help, and the better you understand their perspectives and feelings and overall experiences, usually the more your company or organization will be able to help in whatever it is that they're trying to do. And this, hopefully, is then a subject that really is of interest to your leadership. But just like you can't really understand what someone's perspective is unless you've gone and talked to them, you can't really understand what your leadership's perspective is unless you've gone and sat down with them as well, too. Very, very important step. So while we're talking about customer experience and leadership, just now, the idea of potentially rethinking how your company or organization is doing whatever it is that they do just kind of slipped in there. And that's going to bridge us to the subject of teams and team members. Good experiences for customers, clients, beneficiaries, patients, whomever, almost never happen from the efforts of just one person. Good experiences, meaningful experiences, experiences that make a difference to someone, typically happen from the efforts of multiple people. And so while leadership must be on board with the ideas of working on better experiences, so must your colleagues. So let's talk about the importance of teams. Now, just for a moment, imagine yourself in a restaurant enjoying a truly superb meal, whether it's pasta or tacos or high-end French cuisine or an innovative vegan delight. Just think about having an extraordinary meal when you're out for lunch or dinner. What happens to your thoughts and feelings about that extraordinary dining experience when you add to that scene a truly unhappy, disgruntled, sarcastic, and downright snarky server? Someone who's really unhappy on many levels and is not focused on producing or providing service that's as great as the food coming out of the kitchen. It can ruin the whole experience. You know what I mean? So what the takeaway here is that what you need to understand is that no matter how spectacular of a program or service or clinic or donor event, whatever it is you're putting on, there are other elements that can ruin the experience for the people that you're ultimately trying to get through to, that you're trying to help. And this all comes back to team members. The culture of an organization or team must support creation of value for whomever you're working to help. It can't just be the CX staff. You'll never find success if that's the case. It can't just be the CX staff or product managers or event organizers. Great experiences that truly help people and that end up making a difference somehow are produced by teams of people working together. A quote-unquote employee is many times someone who comes to work to do a specific task. They may or may not care about the great experiences that are created. But teams, members of teams, understand that we all have to work together to be successful. And this is a huge component of customer experience work. And it brings us right to the issue of culture. CX teams many times find themselves working very closely with not just leadership or product teams or event teams, but also with human resources or talent management organizations. If your company is large enough that you have a HR or talent team, I encourage you to engage with them. They should be your friends and collaborators. If you work for a smaller company or organization that does not have an HR or talent team, then this is a really important subject to talk about with leadership, that being team members, because culture is absolutely critical. And if you're in a smaller organization, your leadership is going to be very involved in culture. So one last point I'd like to make here. Language counts. It really does. I see customer experience experts and consultants and others commonly address employee experience as a critical factor to CX work. And the idea of what they're referring to as employee experience might very well be critical to CX work. But back to, words count. The use of the word employee always gives me pause. The term employee always produces a gut reaction. I think if you're talking about employee experience, you are already at risk of failure in your CX programs and efforts, because while this might only be a slight change in language, team member experience is where it's at. Understanding that great experiences are created by teams is critically important. Success is found in teams. Employees may help create success, but it's team members that create customer experience success. And I think this is especially true in social impact environments where success means that you're ultimately helping more, you're helping people. So that was a bit about the all-important topic of culture, or more specifically, considerations related to culture, leadership, and team members when working on creating better experiences for beneficiaries, customers, clients, whomever it is that you're trying to help. I'll also be addressing culture in my forthcoming book, Mission is the Journey, that I'm working on right now. It's a big topic, and so I will I'm trying to address this issue, which is so important, in a easily digested manner. So I'm working on that right now. And if you're looking for an interesting book to read, I'll refer back to my opening of this podcast where I shared my gratitude for Gary Vee, and I'd suggest checking out his latest book called Crushing It. There's a lot of material in Crushing It about new forms of media and how you approach what you do in the business of for-profit startups, but I don't think it takes too much extrapolation to interpret some of Gary's concepts into nonprofit, social impact, social enterprise, and other for-profit businesses that are focused on making a difference in this world. How you go about doing that work and the positivity in the approach that you take has a lot to do with culture too, and I don't hesitate referring people to the book Crushing It that Gary Vee has in market. I think some of the concepts in there are very relevant to help you achieve your mission, whatever that might be. As I've said before, Social Impact CX is also intended to become an interactive forum, a place to stir conversation or answer questions, provide some context, definitions, hopefully achieve a better understanding of customer experience work. So what questions do you have about culture, leadership, team members, or any other topic related to customer experience work overall, especially in a social impact or nonprofit environment? You can ask a question at Social Impact CX a couple different ways. First, you can send an email to comment@socialimpactcx.com. That's comment@socialimpactcx.com. You can also find us on Twitter and post a question there. Our Twitter handle is @SocialImpactCX. And if you feel so inclined, please include the hashtag SociMPCX. And please follow us on Twitter to stay up to date with new podcasts and other related content. Or if you're listening to this podcast via YouTube, feel free to post a question in the comments section, and we'll do our best to catch you there. That's for SoundCloud as well, too. While at YouTube, however, please subscribe to the Social Impact CX channel to stay up to date with all of our videos and recordings. This is John Corrigan reminding you that, especially in social impact work, it's important to understand that your mission is really all about someone else's journey. And the more you know about someone's journey, the more you can help. Thanks for listening to Social Impact CX.